Welcome back to the next episode of our Untitled podcast. Did you decide? You said you heard something before in the last episode that made you think we had a cool episode name. Did you figure that out? No. All right. Well,
what could that have even been?
I don't know.
He said something nostalgia, and I was like, all right.
Oh yeah.
I was like, thinking all week long. I was like, nostalgia geeks. No, that sounds lame. I was like, nostalgia babies. That sounds funny, but also weird.
No, I kind of have. So I told him this idea that I came up with. It's not the best idea, but I was trying to think of puns, and this just randomly popped to me. I want to see what you think of it. So it all depends on how the inflection you say it. But you know the movie or story arc Days of Future Past, right?
The X-Men movies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
you said the story arc, and I was like,
sorry, because it's an X-Men comic book, but it's also a movie, so it's just what I was thinking of. But basically, you just say it's the Days of Future cast.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Uh-huh. It has no context to what we're doing. I just thought it was funny.
Nah.
And I was thinking about that movie.
I'll keep that in mind. I like that. Anyway, my name is Jordan, and to my left I have
Ben,
and to my right I have
Tyler. And
this week we have a little episode. I guess Star Wars is just going to be our focus, right, Ben?
Like episode 2, another Star Wars. Like, it won't become our thing until the 3rd episode. If we're still talking about Star Wars on the 3rd episode, then we're a Star Wars podcast. But until we get to that point, right now we're just pop culture.
And then Days of Future Cast doesn't even matter because it's like, would they have an X-Men title for their Star Wars podcast? That makes sense.
Honestly, I would be okay with it. Anyways, so this week, as the recording of this podcast, we are a day away from the season 7 premiere of The Clone Wars on Disney Plus, and pretty much The Clone Wars is kind of, I would say, really integral probably to everybody here. Like, all three of us love it. Me and Tyler, we grew up watching it, and we thought in preparation for season 7, we would all take a minute, find our favorite story arcs of that show, and we'll just talk about it and talk about why we liked it, why we think it's important, and then we'll just get some comments and opinions from the other people.
You guys were pretty young when it came out, like when it first came out, right?
Oh yeah,
like
I was like 8 years old. When
I always tell people that the Clone Wars was like, because you know how everyone says like my Star Wars, like, so for older fans it's the original trilogy, and for people that are a little bit older than me, they would say the prequels were theirs. Well, the Clone Wars was my Star Wars. I came out the movie that hasn't really aged too well, to be honest, but
it didn't age well when it came out.
no, but that movie came out when I was in 4th grade, and the show came out like the fall out, like after that, and I was instantly hooked.
Because the movie came out in like 2009 or 10, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Like the summer or spring, and then like the show came out that fall.
So I'm in that age group where when I was 5 or 6 was when the original trilogy was getting its re-release as the special editions.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the original trilogy was my Star Wars. I was 9 when episode 1 came out.
Okay.
So my introduction to new Star Wars was around the same time as y'all's, just 10 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really interesting that like for you to see a new Star Wars was the Clone Wars movie /
because like I said, I was like a baby when episode 1 came out. Now my parents always like to say that they used to put that movie on to get me to fall asleep, and it's the only thing I would watch. I don't remember any of that though. And I think episode 3 came out when I was like 5, so I remember the commercials. I remember having some action figures, some Lego stuff, but like I don't remember seeing that movie.
Yeah.
But the Clone Wars movie was like, man, like I remember the trailer came out and I'm like, this is something for me. And the other thing too is that I thought was interesting with the Clone Wars is that I was the perfect age group, because as I grew up and matured little by little, so did the show.
Yeah.
Because the show slowly but surely got to more adult themes, more serious situations, and stopped being as kiddie. Like pretty much after I would say like season 2, like towards the end of season 2 and then onward, like the show really took like a dive, and I grew up with that. Yeah. Like it took a dive to a more serious tone, and it really kind of dealt with some complex themes. But it was also, I think, gave the essence of what George Lucas was trying to do with Star Wars in the first place, was to have something and try to explain these huge complex themes for kids. Because at the end of the day, Star Wars has always been for kids, and I think that the Clone Wars really embodies that really well. And
yeah, I was gonna say that the original Clone Wars movie was perfect for y'all's age, because I saw it with my friends just getting out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
We were all leaving high school. We went and saw this movie because we were so excited. It's a new Star Wars movie, and it was just like there was cool stuff in it, but there was a lot of childish shit. Like we hated that Ahsoka kept calling Anakin Sky Guy.
Dude, I was a kid and I
Stinky.
hated that. I thought that was stupid. I'm
Yeah, I mean, it was-
Master.
Yeah, it was. So there was some questionable shit in there, but like that definitely was like a good introduction for you guys, and the show is pretty phenomenal.
And then the other thing too is, I guess you would probably think about this more because people always, because I never had a problem with Ahsoka when I was a kid, and luckily like she matured when I'm like when I grew up, so I never really noticed that. But from a lot of older fans, they always say that they hated Ahsoka in the beginning, like she was a terrible character. For one, it also doesn't make sense that Anakin had a Padawan anyways, and so
Since he was technically still a Padawan.
well
at the time of Clone Wars, he was a knight, so he could.
Okay.
He was the same rank as what Obi-Wan was when he got Anakin as an apprentice.
Gotcha.
yeah.
So and that made sense to me. I thought that was interesting.
Well, it's just like context to the story. It's weird because I'm like, there is no, like, obviously there wouldn't have been any mention of her in episode 2, but like episode 3 you would think would mention her, but like obviously they didn't come up with the character of Ahsoka until like 2 years after episode 3 came out. So it's just kind of interesting the way like it's just a really, really big like plot hole. And it's like not one of those things that like George Lucas created the character of Ahsoka, so it's just really interesting to see how that all worked out. But
Well, George Lucas, he's come up with some great ideas, and he's come up with some absolute shit ideas. But I think it was interesting because around the same time as like when Star Wars Force Unleashed came out, and I think there was a heavy connection there because Starkiller and Force Unleashed, he had a very particular way of how he held his lightsaber, and Ahsoka holds hers the same way. And so since Starkiller is Vader's apprentice, Ahsoka is Anakin's apprentice, you kind of see this parallel that I thought was pretty interesting.
I didn't even think about that. That's awesome.
yeah.
And it changed. It didn't really change that much over time, but her character, at first I was like, yeah, I hate this. Like, it wasn't that she was an apprentice or anything, but over time she's become one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, she's like arguably one of the best things about Clone Wars. Like,
I agree.
she really hit her stride halfway through season 2, and she really grew into her own, and she's like one of the best characters, and that's why they brought her back for Rebels. That's why they're doing all these other things with her now. Like,
And her stories in the comics and whatnot that bridge the gaps that are in the shows are so interesting. Like,
Yeah.
I've watched plenty of YouTube videos just over like her storyline because it's really it's out of the new expanded canon. It's something that I've really held on to as a new interesting character.
like because of all the new new canon books, her book was one of the only ones I've ever picked up because I'm like, she's like one of my favorite characters, and knowing more about her, especially because there was such a gap. And I guess we'll get into this more towards the end of the podcast over how the Clone Wars has evolved and because it got canceled and all these things. And so Dave Filoni basically used Rebels to kind of help tie up some loose ends that he never got to finish with Clone Wars. Well, she showed up in Rebels, and like there's like, where the fuck did you come from? And there's this huge gap, and so it was kind of cool to see him tie up that story. But also it's kind of nice because the book Ahsoka kind of helped bridge that gap also. But now with season 7, we're finally going to get that conclusion that he really wanted to do. Because, like, from what I've read and from what I've heard, season 7 is just a couple, like, it's a very shortened version of what they wanted to do to end the show. But they're trying to tie up as many loose ends as they can. And it's supposed to lead right into Revenge of the Sith, too. So, that'll be really nice.
Hell yeah.
So,
Do you want to start us off with your story arc?
yeah, so jumping right in, my story arc that I decided to go for was the Mortis trilogy. And I say trilogy and not arc because unlike most of the episode arcs or story arcs in the Clone Wars, these were actually back to back, not randomly spread out through the different seasons and stuff like that. So just a basic overview of the arc is Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan are responding to a distress signal when they get transported to this other realm, essentially called Mortis, and it's basically this ethereal plane that exists outside the universe. And they come to find that there are 3 beings there, the father, the son, and the daughter, who each represent a side of the Force. So the daughter represents the light side of the Force, the son represents the dark side, and then the father represents balance. And so basically they find out that the 3 beings represent the balance of the Force in the galaxy and stuff like that. And so the Father has actually taken them there because we find out that Anakin, as the Chosen One, is meant to replace the Father to control the children and is to help. Sorry. He's supposed to basically just keep them in line because whatever happens in Mortis has dire consequences for the fate of the galaxy in terms of the Force. And there are a bunch of events that take place, but basically the son, after realizing who Anakin is, tries to use Anakin to escape the planet, and in the process he accidentally kills his sister, which throws the whole light side out of balance because it basically vanishes the light side from the planet. And then the Father in turn has to decide to end the son's life, and he needs Anakin's help to do it. And so all these things happened. All three beings end up getting killed, and basically Anakin is now in charge of bringing balance to the Force. And that was a really basic explanation of that. But the reason I wanted to talk about this arc in particular is because, first of all, like, as far as talking about the Clone Wars show, there is I feel like the Mortis arc really represents the Clone Wars like step into the big leagues as far as Star Wars canon goes, because I feel like up until that point there were some interesting stories, but it was nothing that really like affected the overall story of Star Wars, especially episodically. You're like, this show takes place in between episodes 2 and 3, and at the time it's helping to flesh out these characters a little bit more, but there's no impact because like, you know where the end point destination is. It's like, you know what episode 3 is already, so they can't do anything to change that. And so I feel like up until that point, like, there was nothing that was super important about the show, but this 3-episode arc changed everything, mostly because it helps to establish the prophecy of the Chosen One, which has been the biggest tying theme throughout all 6 movies. And the other thing it does too is it helps to establish Anakin as being the Chosen One, because there's also a big argument between whether Luke is the Chosen One or Anakin is the Chosen One, because in the original trilogy, Obi-Wan says that Luke is the Chosen One and he's set to bring balance to the Force, but George Lucas with the prequels helped to say that Anakin was the Chosen One and it was his job. And I feel like with Mortis, it really, instead of making it this like vague thing of Anakin has to destroy the Sith to bring balance to the Force, or all these other things, and it's all these vague concepts, Mortis, by using the father, son, and the daughter, really kind of helps give you a physical aspect to what Anakin's job is. And whether or not you believe he's actually supposed to stay there on the planet Mortis to keep control of children, or if it's all just a metaphor, it really helps to establish like his role as the Chosen One and what he's supposed to do to bring balance to the Force. And I always thought that was really interesting, the way they like basically chose to manifest these beings as a representation of light and dark and the balance between them. I don't know what y'all think about that, but
the first time I watched it, I kind of hated it because I didn't really want there to be a personification of the Force. To me, Anakin as the Chosen One was always just like the generic, champion of the universe, where it was his actions would dictate, and I in the end it ultimately does. And I kind of, even after watching the original trilogy, he is the person that brings balance because he's the one that sides with Luke and throws Palpatine over the side. So I didn't really feel like there needed to be a personification for him to like. It was interesting though, and since then there's been a lot more inclusion of Force created beings. To me, it was like another step in like the midichlorian bullshit that didn't need to exist.
See, for me, I feel like it helps bring the midichlorians into the right direction. So there's a quote. So also, I wrote down some highlights. One of the fact is that in the first episode, we get the Force ghosts of Qui-Gon Jinn, who they got Liam Neeson to return to voice, which I thought was really awesome because Qui-Gon Jinn was one of the coolest parts of episode 1. He's a really cool, interesting character, and I'm kind of mad. I was always kind of upset that they killed him off in the episode 1 when he's such an important part to the story as far as establishing the Force ghost ideal. but he says that Mortis is a conduit through which the entire force of the universe flows. So basically, instead of using the science cop out of midichlorians and stuff like that, basically you can think of this place as just a big conduit, and what happens there is a representation of what happens in the galaxy. And it's just a little bit more interesting, and it's a little bit more mythological that way, and it kind of takes away from some of the science of it, which I really, really appreciated. And just the overall kind of, I don't know exactly what like mythology aspect it comes from per se, but I just always thought that was more interesting.
It's definitely true, and with Clone Wars, it did lean further into the mysticism of Star Wars that original novels and comics got into, which was nice. And I mean, I like it now. I think it's a really interesting take of a weird little side story, and I like how it stayed with the series enough to get in, like, you know, there's parts of it in Rebels, like there's the temple and whatnot that has the.
I feel like the Rebels even like took it a step further.
They definitely
established freaking time travel in Star Wars, which is something that nobody thought was possible until that point. And that was way more heady and like over the top than what they did in the Clone Wars. So
I think the biggest complaint nowadays is that people feel like every time they make something new in Star Wars, it's breaking some rule of Star Wars. And I think when I was much younger, that was probably the problem that I had with this story arc. But now, for me, I just feel like there aren't any rules. It's Star Wars. It's space wizards and weird alien creatures, and why do there need to be rules? Force powers don't matter. It's like,
well, the other thing too is like, even if you're talking about rule breaking, I'm like, the person who created the goddamn rules is the one who wrote that episode, and because George Lucas has such a direct involvement in the show, and him and Dave Filoni both worked very closely to get whatever vision he wanted. So I'm like, you can't say he's breaking the rules when he's the one who made them in the first place, you know? Like, all he's doing is just helping to establish more concrete themes to the ideas he set in the original trilogy. Like, that's all it is. And the other thing too is like, it's really hard to pull from the original trilogy, because I'm like, yes, they're really good, but it's like, he wrote those when he was in like his late 20s, early 30s.
Well, he wrote the first one.
Yeah.
He didn't write the second one, and I think he came back for the third one. But I mean, he wrote the prequels. The problem with George Lucas is that he has a vision. He won't stop tampering with the vision, but sometimes because
he's even said that like he is never happy. He's never been happy with the final cut of the original Star Wars movie. Like, he's always wanting to change it, always wanting to add new things, and it just like he'll just never be happy with it.
I mean, he hasn't even submitted the original cut of the first Star Wars film to the National Archives, because every 10 years they choose several films to go into the archives.
It just didn't look like it was recording.
Oh, no, it's recording.
But
Sorry.
that would be a bummer.
Every 10 years or so, they choose several films to submit to the National Archives to preserve them for future generations, and it has to be the original cut, it has to be the original film. Well, George Lucas has never submitted the
original edit of Star Wars. He's always included the like the remasters that Jordan was talking about, because, like he was saying, he always keeps trying to build and build and build, and never thinks it's good enough. Which I think a lot of artists can kind of relate to, but at a certain point, I feel like you just kind of have to cut it off.
Well, I think he's kind of right too, because I mean, you guys, you know the story of the complications with the creation of the Force Awakens, or not Force Awakens, Force Unleashed video game?
No.
So the reason that in the game, Starkiller doesn't have a name, he's just codenamed Starkiller, aka Darth Vader's apprentice, was because at that time everything had to be run through Lucas to be canon. And so there was going to be a point when Darth Vader like basically kind of knights Starkiller and makes him a true Sith Lord. And so they're like, all right, George Lucas came to the studio, they're like showing him everything, and they're like, so we're coming up with some ideas for a cool Sith name for him, what do you have any ideas, Mr. Lucas? And he was like, he sits down and thinks for a little bit, and he's like, all right, I got 2 you can choose from. And the first one is Darth Icky.
What? Yeah. The fuck?
And then the second one, I don't remember what the second one was, but it somehow less stupid than Darth Icky, but still both terrible. So they were like, those are great, Mr. Lucas. Actually, I think we're just going to stick with Star Killer for now, because that's just, we want it to be a mystery. And so, like, later on in the canon, they gave him an actual name. It was like Gaelic something or another. I don't remember the
Gaelic,
dude's name.
yeah, Gaelic.
But it was like, that's one of those. And then another thing was, not too long after, the studio wanted to create a Darth Maul video game that was similar in style to the Batman Arkham games. And Darth Maul was going to be a Sith assassin where, like, you sneak around in the shadows and, like, assassinate people. And so, like, they're getting ideas, and George Lucas is in their room. And they're sitting at this big conference table, and there's all this, like, Star Wars paraphernalia all over the place. And he looks over, and he sees there's, like, a model of Darth Maul, and he grabs it and puts it in front of him. And then there's a model of Darth Talon, who is from the Legacy comics, from Cade Skywalker, which is Luke Skywalker's grandson. Darth Talon is one of his Sith disciples. She's a Twi'lek with the red and black Sith tattoos all over her. And he grabs that model and grabs the Darth Maul model, and he puts them together, and he says, these two are friends. And the people there are like, Mr. Lucas, Darth Maul is from pre-Clone Wars, and Darth Talon is from, like, 50 years after the fall of the Empire. And he was like, okay, no problem. We'll just clone Darth Maul. And so the video game was going to be Darth Maul and Darth Talon, and Darth Maul was going to be cloned and brought into the future. And it was just like, he's just a little boy with toys creating stories, which sometimes is cool and sometimes blows.
Well,
what the hell is this, Terminator?
The other thing I've always said is he's really good at making, like, worlds. Stories not so much. The world of Star Wars is interesting, and one that lends itself to, for example, The Mandalorian, because it means that it's just a giant sandbox with which people can come and make their own really cool shit. And, like, George Lucas created all that, but, like, when it gets into the minutiae of things, like, it can get kind of really weird.
I mean, he created midichlorians.
Yeah.
His first venture back into Star Wars. It's like, force sensitive microbes in your blood. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. On the note of Starkiller, wasn't Starkiller the original name of Luke Skywalker?
Yes, that's
okay,
why
I
they
thought
named
so.
him
I
that.
couldn't remember if I was
Starkiller.
remembering that right or if I was just making that up.
And then they used that name again in Force Awakens for Starkiller base.
Because The Force Unleashed wasn't canon anymore anyways.
It's still a really good nod. I mean,
it's nice, because that name has been connected to Star Wars for as long as Star Wars has been around, so it's nice to see them still use it.
And as a connection back to our topic of Clone Wars, Starkiller Base is actually Ilum from Clone Wars, where
they get their saber crystals.
Yeah, where the little Jedi younglings go get their saber crystals.
Yeah, because they call it, like, Elam or something like that.
Yeah.
Or alum. I don't know. So one other thing about this arc that I really, really like, just tying it back into that real quick, is it also showcases Anakin's one fatal flaw, which is just his attachments. And, like, the one thing about being a Jedi is that you are not supposed to have any, and that has always been Anakin's problem, is that he can't let go of the people he cares about, because that's the whole problem with what happens in the show is that the brother or the son goes and he kidnaps Ahsoka, and so then he has to go rescue Ahsoka, and because he tries to rescue Ahsoka, the daughter has to help him, and the daughter dies, and it's what causes everything. So, and the other one of the coolest parts, which is in the third episode of the arc, the son, in order to get Anakin to help him, he shows him the future of what he'll do. And he shows Padme dying, he shows him becoming Darth Vader, he shows him killing younglings, and it's like Anakin finds out about his future. And even then, in order to bring quote-unquote peace to the galaxy and to save his wife, he still chooses to join the son to help him because he thinks the son is going to help him establish order. It's stupid, but it's just what he thinks, because he's like, above all else, he wants to save the people he cares about because he can't let go of them. And I think also the brother uses manipulates himself into he becomes Anakin's mother, and he has a conversation with her talking about, you chose to let me die, all these other things you failed, and like that just throughout it really just kind of helps to connect Anakin's headspace in episodes 2 and 3, which is Anakin is just afraid to lose the one he loves, and because of that he will do anything to keep them safe, which is why he falls towards the dark side. And I feel like this arc beautifully represents his fatal flaw. And even I think the father at the end of the episode, he was just like, right now, like you will bring balance to the Force. I've foreseen it. You brought balance to it here on Mortis, and you will bring balance to it in the galaxy, but beware of your heart, because that will be your downfall. And I've just always thought that was really, really nice. And it was just real, because the thing about the Clone Wars is that I think it's one of its strongest things is that it's helped to flesh out the character of Anakin, because the prequels didn't really do a great job of that. And I think that this arc overall is a really good representation of that.
I mean, this is kind of a stretch, but you could almost say that the arc kind of represents the three big characters in the three trilogies, which is Anakin, Luke, and Rey. I don't really know what you guys think about Rey and all of her character stuff and shit, but you could honestly see those three characters as the embodiments of the three people on Mortis. So Anakin being the dark side, and like you said, his fatal flaw is his heart. Luke being the light side, trying to be this lawful enforcer or whatever, and then Rey trying to find the balance between the two. And with the last movie that has come out, Rey is kind of like, oh shit, I don't have to be good, I don't have to be bad, I can kind of follow my own rules, but at the same time, I don't really have to be one or the other, I guess.
I think with I honestly I feel like Rise of Skywalker, it's not like a genius way of tying it together. I feel like they ham-fisted that on purpose to make it super, because I mean, in the past, like the whole thing with Anakin going to the dark side and then coming back, that's not a common occurrence of going to the dark side and coming back. And even though it was at the very last minute, you know, he gets that redemption. Mm-hmm. Luke was a character that very much like Rey, like has a lot of connections, has a lot of flaws, continues to act on them even later on, you know, so fearing so much that he makes himself a hermit, you know, he exiles himself just out of pure fear of becoming his father. Mm-hmm. So,
which I find stupid, because at the end of Return of the Jedi, like basically Luke does what his father couldn't, is he let go of his attachments, he let go of his, like he left his friends on Endor because he knew that was the right thing to do. He had to let go of them in order to do what he needed to do. And then when he's fighting Darth Vader and he's trying to get his father to come to the good side, like he throws away his saber because he's like, you can strike me down, like I'm fine with that, my father's a good man, he won't do, like he let go of his attachments in order to get what he needed to do done. And I think he just that's a perfect example of doing what his father couldn't, and so I don't understand why he was afraid of becoming him after that.
So for me, I don't see that, because when he goes up to, he thinks he's doing what he's supposed to do and leaving his friends to protect them, and then whenever he fights with Vader, Vader's taunting him and saying that, like, you know, oh, so you have a twin sister, you know, if I can't turn you, then I can probably turn her. And that's when Luke goes into rage mode.
Yeah, and he embraces his emotions in that moment, but then, like, after that, like, then he, like, regains control of himself, and then he throws away his saber, and he ends the fight there.
But I think that when it comes,
the ball in his Vader's court.
One of the issues I have with the argument that Luke has surpassed his issues
I'm not saying that at
Return
all.
of the Jedi is, and that becoming a hermit is uncharacteristic of Luke, is that trauma isn't the same for everyone, and it changes over time. And as, like, if you think about where we leave Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi, yes, everybody's all excited because the Empire's gone, but he is the last of the Jedi. He has had very little formal training of what to do, and he has a huge burden of rebuilding an order that became, like, its history was it became so full of itself that it collapsed with its enemy right in its face.
Yeah.
So he has all this pressure of not failing at a completely new task, and as soon as he has just the slightest doubt that he is doing it right, not only his most powerful student, but his family turns on him and goes to the dark side out of confusion and out of, pressure from the dark side. So he immediately, it's like, man, everything that I've been trying not to do, I fail. And so it's like, it's not any different than Yoda and Obi-Wan going into exile at the end. Because the Jedi, I mean, if they can't exile themselves when they fail, then they should have just immediately continued going, trying to do little strikes or finding they didn't even try to go and find any of the other Jedi. There was other living Jedi.
I think part of that was mostly just because, like, Luke, or it was like they were already in exile in the original trilogy, so they had to write them to that point, and so I think that's where that came from a story standpoint. But the other thing too is I always thought was interesting is that, like, because Luke, everyone's like Luke is a Jedi, he's a Jedi master, but like he had like no like formal training too, like you said. I always thought that was interesting because like the prequels showcase all of the crazy ass shit and trials you have to go through to become a Jedi, from going to a Padawan, Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, all these other things, and I'm like, Luke had none of that. Rey had even less of that.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting the way they do that, because even in like what I've always loved about like smaller side stories, like getting to Rebels a little bit here, is like Kanan always struggled with the fact that he said, like, I'm never gonna become a better Jedi because like I don't have the training anymore. And then the same with Ezra too. And then in the game Fallen Order, he
Cal Kestis.
Yeah, Cal Kestis. I was gonna say Kanan Jarrus, but I'm like, that's Kanan from freaking Rebels. So yeah, Cal Kestis, like he's like even saying like, I can't like continue this because like I'm not like I'm just like I won't be able to get any farther than that. But then like Luke fucking does it, and Rey does it too. So I don't know. I always think that's interesting.
I think it's pretty good. That's a good choice of story arc because it's one of the most iconic.
I think it's just the two biggest things for me is that it establishes the show's importance as far as establishing canon goes. It really puts it up there, basically. Like you need to pay attention to this because this is important, and then it just kind of helps to showcase the Chosen One and the prophecy, and really solidifies Anakin as the Chosen One. So, but that's why I picked that. So, I think that's all wrapped up on me. Jordan, you want to go next?
Actually, I was going to let Tyler go.
Really?
Well, I haven't heard from you in a little bit. I'd like to hear. I also don't remember what your story arc is.
Okay, so I kind of chose to, but the first one I chose to do was...
Wow, you can only choose one, Tyler.
Oh, okay.
Jesus Christ. I set you up for this to nail it out of the park.
And you fucking spiked it into the ground.
Hey, man. That's a win in volleyball. Anyway... I chose the 99 arc. It's a 2-episode arc from season 3. It's the first 2 episodes. It was written by Cameron Litvak and obviously directed by Dave Filoni, who directs the Clone Wars. Basically, it's not directly about 99, but 99 as a character was this flawed clone who had a hunchback, and was just basically sentenced to do maintenance on Kamino because he couldn't go and serve in the army because he wasn't physically able to. So the story arc follows the Domino Squad, which contains Fives, which is one of the most important characters in the whole Clone Wars series. Like, his arc spans almost every single season. And I think Ben was saying when we were talking earlier that it's possibly going to be even resolved in season 7, he said.
I think the Fives' arc gets resolved in season 7 at some point.
But yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I had to collect my thoughts for a second. But it follows Domino Squad, and it introduces 99 after they fail their first exam to become troopers. And after a whole bunch of bullshit in the first episode, when Domino Squad succeeds, Heavy, one of the troopers in Domino Squad, gives his medal that he received for completing the task to 99 and was like, hey, we'll see each other again, even though I'm getting shipped off to another world where I might die. So here's my medal. I'll come back and get it from you. So in the next episode, I don't know how much time has passed, because with the Clone Wars episodes, you don't know how much time has passed. You don't know like where they've been in between.
Here's
it's so fucking confusing.
Because one of the things about Clone Wars storylines are fucking like messed up, because the 99 storyline is a continuation of one season, one episode called Rookies, wherein Heavy dies.
Yeah.
And so they start season 2, no explanation. He's just suddenly there and they're training, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But anyways.
But in the second, they set it up in the second episode. No, I'm sorry. That Grievous and Asajj Ventress are going to be commencing an assault on Kamino in order to retrieve the clone DNA and try to find out weaknesses about them and stuff like that. So the whole episode, they're setting up, the Republic intercepts a transmission from Count Dooku to Ventress or Grievous, I can't remember which. And basically they figure out, oh shit, they're going to be attacking the place where all of our troopers are made, and that's kind of a little important. So they dispatch the 501st Battalion, which is the battalion that's commanded by Anakin and Obi-Wan, to Kamino, and it also has Fives and I can't remember the other clone's name right now. Echo. It also has Fives and Echo, which were 2 clones from Domino Squad in the first episode. So they go back to Kamino, and Fives and Echo meet up with 99, and 99 is like, oh, I have his medal, and they're like, oh, shit, sorry, Heavy's dead. So that kind of it kind of sucks, but it's kind of a little sad reunion moment, but they're kind of like, wow, you actually remember us. And he's like, I remember all of my brothers, which is kind of a really, for me personally, kind of a heart-wrenching moment, because you kind of realize how much clones are people in the Star Wars universe. And it's kind of expanded upon within the Clone Wars universe, and now that it's technically canon, isn't it?
What? Clone Wars? Yeah, Clone Wars is canon.
I just wanted to make sure.
It's always been canon.
Yeah.
Hey.
It was the one thing they didn't take out.
Just wanted to check, okay? But, yeah. So it kind of highlighted that even though they're made up of the same DNA and they're all technically the same person, they have their own personalities and their own memories and their own experiences that they all go through. So later in the episode, when the assault actually starts, the clones get ambushed, and 99, Fives and Echo are on top of this bridge where they're trying to keep battle droids from going into the research facility. 99's like, oh hey, we can go back here, and then all these little clones show up and all this other extra stuff happens. But basically they fall back to the barracks where all the clones are kept while they're training and stuff, and the quote-unquote big battle in between the episode, aside from Obi-Wan fighting Grievous and Anakin fighting Ventress, which happens almost nearly every time anything big happens in that show, they fall back to the barracks and they start running out of ammo, and 99's like, don't worry, I'll go and get more guns and grenades. So Fives and Echo are like, okay, but be careful. So 99 is starting to run back, and 99 gets shot, and then it's this big kind of dramatic scene where 99 essentially dies even after Fives and Echo are trying to kill the droids before they can kill 99. He dies trying to help his brothers and save them, essentially. And it's kind of, even though he's kind of a minor character in the whole Clone Wars series, it's kind of really human, and I really like it. It's nice. I didn't explain that well, but
you did fine until you had to justify it being human and nice. That's great.
So the other thing too is that it does have big implications because. So one of the biggest things that season 7 is going to touch upon is these.
99 was pregnant.
God damn it. No, so
he's pregnant with a
there's going to
baby.
be a set of episodes that deal with these people, these clones that are part of the Bad Batch, and they're basically mutated clones, defective clones who just have these different body modifications, but they call themselves Clone Force 99 out of remembrance to 99, which I think is really, really cool.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting too.
They're like the X-Force of clones.
Yeah, pretty much. So the other thing too, I always thought was interesting is like all like clones are bred to do is to fight, to be a soldier, and if you can't do that, then what is your purpose? Because that was the thing about 99 is because he was defective, like he couldn't fight, he couldn't do the one thing he was literally created to do.
Yeah.
And so like how do you find your sense of purpose with that? And the thing I always liked about the character 99 is that he seemed very content despite his position, despite the fact that a lot of people treated him like shit, especially the Kaminoans, because they didn't give a shit about any of the clones. And I always thought it was nice to see someone, just the way they touched up on that, I always thought was good.
You know, my question was, why didn't they just make him like a tank driver or something? Like something that wasn't so like...
like a fucking janitor. I think it's because the Kaminoans were very proud people and they didn't want to show people defective clones.
They were very, very
just
elitist.
lock the door to the tank and then he can't get out.
Yeah.
He is a tank now. That's what they could have... I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but that's definitely... I would say if there's like a top 5 story arc, you know, for the show... Both of the ones that you guys have picked so far would be in that top 5 because those are very important, just very memorable stories. That one was one of the first ones that really kind of like tugged at my heartstrings a little bit, and it was cool because the show is called Clone Wars, and it has a lot to do with like the clone soldiers and the Jedi and all the fighting that they do,
but as well as the relationships along with them too.
Yeah, and it was cool because a lot of the episodes do have like a lot of Jedi stuff, and at the time when you're younger, you're like, all I want to do is watch people swing laser swords and cut off limbs. But the show was really good at having episodes that didn't have anything to do with that. You know, some of my favorite episodes are the ones that don't have anything to do with the Jedi. Most of the time have nothing to do with the war effort. Like the Boba Fett episodes where he's, you know, a little bit later on, whenever he's like got the like Bosk and all of them, they're trying to do that
train heist,
the train job.
That was a really good episode.
That one's really cool, but you know, it's just.
I just watched that last night.
It's the DNA of like the Mandalorian show, where it's like, here's the world and what's going on, but here's just like a character story, and so having that with the clones, people that, you know, when you first see them in Attack of the Clones, you're just like, okay, so they're just a bunch of Jango Fetts, like, whatever.
They're just fucking cannon fodder. They're just the excuse to have big battles. That's all they are. And especially episode 3 was even worse about that, because then they're like, they instantly turned on these people that they've been trained to they've been fighting with for years, and they instantly fucking shot them up, no questions asked. They never explained that in episode 3.
And they only in Revenge of the Sith, they only ever use Commander Cody's name. They don't say any of the other names.
None of the other.
So it's really interesting in this show seeing how, you know, thousands of these people that look identical have different personalities, and how they, like, what they do to themselves to give themselves a unique quality, whether they shave their head or they have tattoos, or the different nicknames that they have due to whatever, you know, something that happened to them, or something like a characteristic they have.
Because the nickname for them is like a badge of honor, because it's like the last thing that they want to be remembered by is their freaking
their code,
their number. Because they each have their separate number to keep track of them. They like never go by them, even though like that's what the community.
Which is funny for Fives, because
his
nickname is because he's got a bunch of 5s at the end of
his
but
even 5 is better than saying 025555. Like it just it's way better than that. And I think because I really love like war movies, like I think they're really good. And like the Clone Wars,
you're just a violent person.
Yeah, you know. But I think that the Clone Wars does a really good job of like you said, humanizing these characters who are less than human, sort of like they're clones.
I didn't say they were less than human. I don't know if I want a recording of you saying, yeah, like you said, they're less than human. I don't need that taken out of any kind of weird context there.
My bad. But lost my train of thought there. But the
less than human.
But the story arcs for all of the clone like episodes and stuff like that, they really kind of mimic like the older Vietnam movies and stuff like that. It was like, what is the point of what we're doing here? Because it really gives the like the Clone War or the clones have more purpose than just fighting. They have more of a drive than to just fight. They want to have a purpose. They want to have lives. There was an episode in I think season 2, I think it was called Deserter, where Rex gets injured and he stumbles on that farm. There happens to be, just by circumstance, there was a clone that deserted, like after the Battle of Geonosis from episode 2. And like him and Rex get into a bunch because he's like, I can't believe you deserted. I can't believe you abandoned your post. He's like, my post meant nothing. Like all I am is just a pawn for these people. Like we were made for like we have no purpose. Like I wanted something more than that. And you're like, oh shit, like, yeah, these are people. They do have feelings and emotions, and that's one of my favorite things about the show is that it just really showcased that.
I mean, that whole kind of idea as far as, like, clones being more than just a use for war is so much more expanded upon within 5's overall arc, and you see that so much more within the Lost episodes, or Season 6, technically. Because I mean,
found.
Huh?
They've been found.
Yeah.
They're not lost anymore.
The found episode. I can't remember.
It's the Lost missions. Yeah.
Lost missions. But I love seeing stuff like that because, like Jordan and Ben said, pretty much all of the interaction that you see between clones and Jedi or even other people is basically Commander Cody and, to an extent, I think Commander Grease says 3 words on Kashyyyk.
Yeah.
So I love seeing just the interactions and the humanity of it, and I really kind of agree that it does kind of harken back to the Vietnam movies or the World War II movies, and just kind of creates and elaborates on the sense of brotherhood that they all have between them.
Yeah.
What's another thing that I don't know if you guys know this or not, but something that has been brought to my attention recently that has changed a lot is I got through finishing Rebels a couple of, like, maybe a month or 2 ago, because I didn't finish it before. I think I watched the first 2 seasons. And part way through watching that, at the same time, I think was when that's when Mandalorian came out. Somebody had told me about how Stormtrooper armor works. And it was, because Stormtrooper armor, everyone's like, you know, why are they wearing plastic? Like, what good is that against laser guns?
Yeah.
And so I had someone explain to me how Stormtrooper armor works, and since then it's kind of fucked me up with how Stormtroopers are, because in Clone Wars, I don't think the armor was the same. Like, those clone troopers just died because they're clones, so they don't care. It's just like the droids, like, they get shot up, they're dead, nobody cares. But with Stormtroopers, they did improve the armor, and so the way Stormtrooper armor works is when it is shot, the whatever space plastic they use disperses the heat into a larger area, so it's not just like a bolt that goes through the body. It disperses that heat to a larger area, and so most Stormtroopers that get shot actually live. They just get severe, like, 3rd-degree burns over, you know, a large portion of their body because of the dispersal of heat.
Mm-hmm.
And so usually they just get knocked out from the pain of being 3rd-degree burned instantly. So that was really weird to me, watching Rebels and just seeing them, like, shoot up a bunch of Stormtroopers and being like, oh, like, they're shooting all these fascist troopers and they're not dying. They're just getting really badly injured.
Yeah.
And then the Stormtroopers are shooting back at the Rebels, who aren't wearing any kind of armor, and they're just dying. And you're like, yo. Yeah. So it's just like, all these Stormtroopers, like, they're just going to go to the hospital for a few months and get some back to tanks, and these Rebels are just going to be dead.
Yeah.
So that was really fucked up thinking about that. But then again, you know, if you get shot in the face as a stormtrooper and that dispersal to heat, you just become a fan of the opera.
I mean, you're still probably fucking die. But
Yeah, but I always thought that was weird to think about because I was like, I don't know. Honestly, I like it better when you're just like, yeah, they get shot and died.
yeah,
But,
and then also, armor in Star Wars has always been weird for me because I'm like, I really don't. They don't ever explain the science of a blaster bolt, like when you get hit and where it goes, because like in the Mandalorian, the fucking Beskar armor just fucking dings off. Like you got hit in the head, you didn't die.
yeah.
I'm like, okay. And even then, it was like a very powerful gun, if I remember right, that hit him too. So I'm like, how does armor work with lasers? I don't fucking know. But in the Clone Wars, they were just cannon fodder. Though they do make a point in several episodes to show like medics and people getting dragged off, and they'll like you get like if you get like in any other like real life movie, like you get hit in the shoulder, like it's not a mortal wound, like it knocks you down. You need a magic to come get you. Like they made a point of showing that, which I always thought was interesting.
Which we will demonstrate now.
But yeah,
Man.
I really thought, even though it's only a 2-episode arc, I really liked 99's arc.
What was your other one that you picked up?
The Boba Fett mini arc, the first one, where I actually have notes. 1 second.
Wow.
It's in season 2 and it's episode 20 through 22. It's the one where he is posing as a clone cadet on a Republic ship where Mace Windu and Anakin Skywalker are, and since Mace Windu killed his father, he's trying to kill Mace Windu.
Fucking clap back, bro.
But what the other clones and everybody else doesn't know is that he's working with Bosk and Aura Singh, which are two really renowned bounty hunters that aren't ever really expanded upon. I mean, Bosk and Dengar are reintroduced later in the series again when Boba Fett shows up again. But I really like those episodes because Boba Fett's one of the most kind of famous characters from the original trilogy, and his character is never kind of explained or expanded upon, and you don't really know who he is aside from, oh, he's a Jango Fett's kid. So
The original, there was a novel series and a bunch of comic books and stuff from the Legacy, and it was sick back.
I loved that series because so much.
Yeah, I remember reading
There was original book trilogy called The Bounty Hunter, and it was after the Sarlacc pit. Like Dengar gets Boba Fett out of the Sarlacc pit, nurses him back to health, and then there's a bounty hunter that is pretending to be Boba Fett wearing Mandalorian armor running around, and Boba Fett tracks that dude down, kills him, takes his armor, and just goes back to being a badass.
Oh shit.
And that story, like that book series also has, like, in between him being healed, also flashes back to like right before Empire Strikes Back, because Boba Fett was never part of the Bounty Hunters Guild. He was his own separate entity, and he was hired by I think it was the Empire to destroy the Bounty Hunter Guild. So he infiltrates it. He joins. He's got this huge thing with Bosk because his dad is like the leader of the guild. Transdoshans, by the way, are like crazy motherfuckers. Like when they kill their enemy, they like strip their skull and they just have like trophy rooms, or just, like they're like predators. They just have a bunch of.
There's an episode in the Clone Wars where it touches up on that too.
Yeah. And so like I'm glad that they kept that, because there's like a whole thing where Boba Fett steals Bosk's ship, the Houndstooth, and Bosk ends in the book. He kills his dad and de-skins his dad's head because it was his enemy, and yeah, there's some crazy shit in that book. But Boba Fett was only cool, like he was cool to look at in the movies, but he only became cool because of Expanded Universe, because once again George Lucas was like, cool character, let's throw him in that spiky butthole.
I mean, Star Wars has a habit of making cool characters that don't do shit.
Yeah.
But
Captain Phasma.
Literally little side tangent. I remember in the promotion to leading up to that, J.J. Abrams was like, yeah, this is not going to be Boba Fett. She's going to be so integral to the plot. She's going to have so much shit to do. She's going to be a badass. literally does the same damn thing with her. And then Ryan Johnson brings her back in episode 8 to do the same damn thing.
He made her cool, but then he was like, he knew that
yeah,
she
he
was
did.
spoiling.
He gave her a badass fight scene. He gave her a little bit more dimension, but she still fucking died.
Also, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there. I'm a Last Jedi defender. I think that that's the best out of the series.
Oh, I'm not shitting on the movie.
And you can fight me on every core aspect of that film. I think it's better than the other two combined. So
I do like Last Jedi. That's a whole other conversation, but I don't have any.
I just wanted to throw that out there in case there's anybody like, man, he sure is defending Ryan. Yeah, I'll defend Ryan Johnson every goddamn day, man. That's my shit. That movie's perfect. But yeah, that one's a cool one too. I don't think it's as memorable as the train
I don't
heist.
think so
The train heist was cool too because there was like the crazy ninja clan
that basically looked like Scorpion.
Yeah, there was like a ninja clan that rode centipedes. It was
It's
insane.
so fucking cool.
Yeah, it was dope.
Because then that so along with getting a kick-ass Boba story, you also got a really cool Asajj Ventress story, which they really fleshed out her character in the show.
Oh yeah.
And she was cool because she was originally from Legacy too. Like she was in the original Clone Wars cartoon. She was in comic books.
Yeah.
If y'all haven't watched the original Clone Wars cartoon, I highly recommend it. Same artist,
the same guy who did
Samurai Jack. Yeah,
I love it.
Shit is dope.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of cool stuff, but
that's actually where Rex came from.
a lot of that shit carried over. It's just for some reason they didn't want to keep that canon. I'm like, why? Like it didn't change a whole lot.
I think it was because Anakin didn't have a soul pendant, and so that was a bigger problem.
It could have been a little bit before. Well, I guess that kind of spans both though, because it has first season is right before or right after episode 2, and the second season is right before episode 3.
So something else I like about that Boba episode in particular, the Boba arc where he's trying to kill Mace Windu, is that Mace Windu ends up getting trapped on the wreckage of a ship with Anakin Skywalker, and you get a little bit of an in-depth insight to their relationship, because I was just listening to an interview with Dave Filoni before, like earlier today, and he was talking about Anakin's relationships with everybody else, and so like, you know, all the memes from episode 3 with like Anakin and Mace Windu like being like confrontational with each other. He's like, take a seat, Anakin Skywalker, all that shit. If you watch all the movies or episodes 1 through 3, and you watch the Clone Wars, like I don't know whether it was intentional, but you can see like this gradual like conflict with Anakin and Mace Windu from the very beginning, because Mace Windu didn't even want him to be a Jedi. He didn't want to do anything like this. If you watch episode 2, he's constantly like belittling Anakin. And also somebody Dave Filoni said that when they were making the show, any scene that Mace Windu has with Anakin, anytime Anakin comes up with a plan, he's constantly like shaking his head at him. He's always like, what the hell are you doing? Like, your plan's fucking crazy. Like, you guys should know it. Like, it's crazy. And then like it's like everything. And then like that episode highlights that whole thing, because I don't remember, I haven't seen the episode in a while, but I know that they had a conversation about that where he was talking about like Anakin being too reckless and putting too, I think the other thing, he puts too much faith in
R2,
because R2, yeah, that's what it was.
It's basically up to R2 to save both of them, because the rest of the gang is back on Coruscant or on another Republic cruiser. So R2 has to get to Anakin's starship and fly all the way back to Coruscant or wherever the rest of the gang is, and basically relay the message, oh shit, Anakin and Mace Windu are fucking dying. So, y'all better fly
trapped
over.
underneath a piece of like debris or something like that.
Yeah, basically underneath a whole fucking starship. While Boba and the rest of the bounty hunters are trying to go through the starship and find them so they can successfully kill Mace and ensure that he's dead. But I don't remember if they know if Anakin's with him or not. But
I don't think so. I think that was just like he happened to be with him on a mission or some bullshit.
And the episode kind of highlights how the Jedi care about clones too, because I mean, obviously you see Anakin's relationship with Rex and the other troopers such as Fives, but when the first attempt on Mace Windu's life on board the ship, when Boba sets a trap in his room, basically if he opens his door a bomb will go off. a trooper is going to his room trying to inform him of something. Trooper opens the door, gets a bomb in the face. So Mace Windu runs down there, sees the trooper, checks on him, he's like, fuck, this kid died. But
that was a really good Samuel Jackson impersonation.
Fuck, this kid died. But even though the trooper is never kind of named from what I remember, it just kind of highlights the idea that the Jedi, for the most part, do realize that clones are real people, have real emotions, have real identities. So, yeah.
Nice.
Thanks.
Nice connection.
Hell yeah, really.
Alright, Jordan, you ready for yours?
Yeah.
Mr. Cream of the Crop.
I mean, it is.
It's the like before he was like it's the best arc. It's the tip top.
Yeah. So the arc that I picked was Darth Maul taking control of Mandalore, and for me this means so like I said, episode 1 came out when I was 9 years old. Darth Maul to me was one of the coolest characters to ever be created for Star Wars. And then they kill him.
It's another Boba Fett situation.
But I mean, they actually gave him more stuff to do. Like
they gave him voice lines and stuff.
Well,
he kills Qui-Gon.
Yeah, he fucking did shit.
Yeah,
he got shit done.
It was dope. And it was the first time you ever see a saber staff, and oh man, there's just so much to it. And then they kill him, and it's just like, what the fuck? And then Attack of the Clones comes out, and it's like, oh man, who's his replacement gonna be? An old man. Oh, okay, cool, awesome. That's what I wanted. I wanted to trade in a devil-looking man with a double-sided lightsaber for an 80-year-old with a cane. Even his lightsaber looks like a cane. It's all crooked. But
I mean, Count Dooku is pretty fucking dope.
No, and Dooku is cool.
That lightsaber lends itself to a specific type of fighting style that only Dooku can do.
I don't care. And it can't be just Dooku, because Ventress has 2 curved lightsabers.
Because Dooku taught her.
I know that. I also know that Dooku is a pretty cool character.
I'm just kidding.
He's got a lot of story shit. Not as cool as Darth Maul, though.
No.
So, Clone Wars was amazing for... there was, back in the day, there was pre-Legacy What If comics. And one of those What If comics was, what if Darth Maul didn't die? What if he got robot legs and then him and Obi-Wan had a fight on Tatooine?
I had that book. I didn't even know what that book was, but I got that around for my birthday one year, and that was always I would reread that thing so many times.
That story was awesome, except for the part where Darth Maul dies because Owen Lars blasts his head off
with a broken gun.
With a
basically blunderbuss.
I was about to say a Tatooine blunderbuss. Like, Jesus Christ.
Stuff the forks and knives in there. Shoot it!
But, so the story arc that I picked, it's Season 5, Episodes 14, 15, and 16, which is, the first one is Imminence, then Shades of Reason, and then ends with The Lawless. So, Darth Maul and his brother Savage Opress, or Savage, if you don't want to say it weird.
He's a savage.
It's after, so since then, there's been two mini story arcs with Darth Maul. There had been Savage, who was Dooku's alternate apprentice, goes and finds his brother. He's a robot spider in a trash heap. Takes him back to Dathomir. Voodoo magic gives him better looking legs and gives him his mind back. Goes after Kenobi. Teams up with some pirates.
Shit went sideways.
Yeah. So, at this point in the story, Maul and Opress are passed out in a escape shuttle in space when the Mandalorian Death Watch come in. They see that they have a lightsaber, and they're like, well, if they're an enemy of the Jedi, then they're a friend of ours, so they take them in. They repair Darth Maul's poorly created robot legs, which looked kind of cool, but I also didn't like them because they were too Grievousy.
Well, they were Grievousy, and then he looked more like like a monster than a man, which I think, to be fair, I think if you look at the story arc from where he came from with the big ass spider legs to that, it kind of makes sense. But I always hated that look for him without the shirt or anything like that.
Yeah, but this changes his look. They give him a shirt, which is weird, but then they give him robot legs that look like normal legs.
They said, "Cover your nippies."
Yeah, pretty much. Even though you can't see him because the Sith tattoos. They give Savage Opress a robot arm because his arm had been previously cut off. So that was kind of cool that he gets a robo arm. And so they come together as a plan to against Kenobi. They realize that they have a common enemy in Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so Darth Maul's plan is to take over Mandalore. And to do that, he needs to bring together an army of outlaws. So the first episode in the arc is just Darth Maul and Death Watch going from planet to planet, getting different crime organization members on their side. So they go and get the Pikes. The first one they go is, I think it's Mustafar. They didn't say which planet it was, but it's all lava-y and it looks like Mustafar. And that is where the Black Suns are. And this is the part in the show that I realize that it is no longer for children because it's a boardroom, long table of all these aliens that are this crime family, and Darth Maul's like, join me or you're gonna suffer, and they're like, ha ha ha, we're the Black Sun, you can't do anything to us, and Darth Maul's like, okay. Savage just throws his lightsaber down this meeting table and decapitates all of them. And it was insane because I was like, well, it's not going to show anything. It shows the camera angle is the lightsaber coming towards the camera, and then the next cut is the lightsaber moving away, and then it just shows a bunch of smoking shoulders as they fall limp to the ground. And I was just like, it just showed dudes' heads get cut off.
You know, season 5 cut a lot of people's heads off in that show. They really found fun ways to do those angles, because I think it happens like 4 different times.
Dude, this episode in particular has so many on-screen deaths that I was like, I cannot believe that this is a child's show. Like, that this was a Cartoon Network and not Adult Swim. Because then they move on to the Pikes, and they get the Pikes to join them, and then they move on to Tatooine. Well, they go to a Hutt planet, and they meet up with one of the Hutts, and Darth Maul's like, where are the rest of them at? And he's like, Jabba's palace. And he's like, you're telling me that Jabba the Hutt is at Jabba's palace? And I was like, yeah, why? I've never seen him go anywhere else. Why wouldn't he be there? And then they kill that Hutt, and I was just like, brutal. Like, lightsaber going through that fat gut. Like, I wish I could have seen it, but whatever. And then they go to Tatooine, where they proceed to murder, like, all the Gamorreans that I've ever seen. It was insane. Like, they're like, the Gamorreans are so slow. Like, I'm gonna hit you with this axe.
It showcases how useless because there's one where, like, the Gamorrean gets up and he's just, like, hobbling over with his, like, and then they just shoot.
Yeah. I feel like Gamorreans are like a metaphor for muscleheads in gyms sometimes. Right. You know, the dudes who walk out with their arms like a foot from the side of their bodies or whatever, and they're just like, I'm so big, I'm so strong. And Gamorreans are supposed to be like these awesome battle guards or whatever, but they're just useless pieces of shit.
I've never seen them do anything cool.
No,
they're just green pigs.
They just look like ugly.
Yeah. So, then Jabba's like, ha ha ha, I'll join you. And it's like, what? Why are you laughing? Like, this dude just, like, fucked up your livelihood. So the next episode is Maul and his newfound outlaw army go to Mandalore, and where Empress Satine is there, and so they plan to, the way that they're going to take over is the outlaws are going to do strategic strikes all over Mandalore, and then the Death Watch are going to come in and save them and prove their worth and gain the appeal of the people. And then that, for whatever reason, gets Satine out of office. Like, people are like, oh, she's useless, so I guess arrest her. And so she gets put in jail, and then Darth Maul's like, well, I guess I'm king now. And what's his name? The Death Watch leader.
Pre-Vizsla.
Yeah, Pre-Vizsla. It's such a weird name that I mean, it's Star Wars. They're all weird names, but that one, I just need to think like Visa. I don't know why.
Visa, because the other thing too is like I think Clan Vizsla, like because like Pre means like the leader of the clan, and he's like the leader of Clan Vizsla or whatever. I don't know. It's Mandalorian lore is so fucking weird.
Yeah, and I feel like they keep changing it. But
that was one thing about that arc that kind of confused me when you compared it with the Mandalorian, because with the Vizsla clan, you had to be a Vizsla, but in the Mandalorian, it doesn't define a Mandalorian as a race.
Yeah, the other thing too, because like Rebels tries to touch up on the clans a lot more, and that was confusing. But also, apparently, sorry for a side note, but like the Mandalorian, when he gets saved by those Mandalorians, that's Death Watch.
Yeah.
Like, if you notice the signets on their like shoulder pads, like that was Death Watch saving him. So it's like, was the Mandalorian a part of Death Watch? Like, or like, how does that fucking work out?
Yeah, well, okay, so Mandalorian has never been a race.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, but then it's a creed.
Yeah.
And so within the creeds are houses, and within like the houses it's very Game of Thrones where they have different power over different regions and whatnot, and then at one point they were a warrior race, like in the Knights of the Old Republic time they were just a warrior race. And then they had the war with the Jedi, and then that kind of dwindled their numbers, and then after that they tried to become not so warlike, because they're basically just space Vikings.
And then they eventually became pacifist during the time of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, because of Empress Satine.
But also, isn't it because like, don't they all live in those domes now because like their wars brought their like the surface of their planet to like fucking
The
dust
brink
and
of
nothing?
destruction.
Yeah, it's the same story as T'Chunka from Mass Effect.
Yeah.
They nuke themselves into, and then they're all a proud people, so they're like, we're not gonna live on other planets, we're gonna live on this shithole, just in weird like metal domes everywhere.
Oh no, we have no food. Well, we're not moving.
Yeah.
It at least defined for me like what Mandalorian kind of was.
Yeah. Well,
because I didn't know if it was a race or not, and I saw that it was just.
Yeah, it's a creed, but then there's also different rules within the different houses, and then like Jango Fett and Boba Fett aren't true Mandalorians, but in the old canon, so Mandalore, it was a person, and it was like the leader that would bring together all the clans, and so in the old canon, Boba Fett actually became the new Mandalore and like went and gathered the last remnants of the Mandalorians and brought them under one umbrella banner and tried to like recreate them as a people, and so that was cool. They didn't keep that, obviously, which sucks. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll do that in the new thing, but it's also worth to note that Vizsla has the Darksaber, which is another really cool lore of Star Wars. It was the first lightsaber created by the first Mandalorian Jedi. And then after the death of that Jedi, it was kept in the Jedi Temple, where the Mandalorians then ransacked the temple to get the lightsaber back, and then it passed down and was like a symbol of leadership within Mandalorian culture.
Which shows up again in
Rebels.
The Mandalorian and Rebels.
Wow, spoiler.
Have you not finished? Oh,
no,
sorry.
I did. No, I got a huge boner when I saw the black blade come through the TIE Fighter.
Because I was watching that show with my family, because they like watching Star Wars, but they're not as near as a level, and I was like losing my shit when I saw the blade stick out of the TIE Fighter. I'm like, oh, and they're like, what? Like, they didn't even know, like, because there was also like vibro blades in the show too, and I'm like, oh, that's a goddamn vibro blade. And they're like, what now? Is it a light? No, it's not a lightsaber. They're different things.
Is that when you were like, all right, listen here, family. I'm gonna start a podcast, but I'm gonna secretly turn it into a Star Wars podcast 2 episodes in. So the end of the second episode, Darth Maul wants to be the ruler of Mandalore and his new underground army. He wants to go further into the neutral territories. So he challenges Pre-Vizsla to a one-on-one fight that ends with the decapitation of Vizsla, giving Darth Maul power of Mandalore and the Darksaber, which is dope. Seeing Darth Maul with that black blade was really, really cool. It triggered all my nerdgasms that I needed. Until the next episode, where Darth Maul uses Empress Satine to lure Obi-Wan to Mandalore because of their young love. What's another thing that I think that's really cool about this whole storyline thing is it shows that Obi-Wan knows exactly how Anakin feels. Like, he's been in that situation where he has had the love of a woman that if he turned his back on the Jedi, he could have been with her and had a completely different life. And she, very much like Padme, is a born leader and wants to do the best for her people. And so because of their circumstances, aren't together, but their love never faded. And so it's just like the polar opposites of Anakin and Padme, because they're just like, well, we just have to be with each other. And it's like, why? You could just not, and then everything would be cool, but whatever. Anyway, so Obi-Wan goes on his own to try to save Satine, who is then murdered in front of him by Darth Maul, which is brutal.
That is the saddest moment in the entire show. That part right there.
More than 99?
Way more than fucking 99, yeah.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Offended.
I'm sorry, man, but watching Satine, like, especially because they built that shit up over seasons. Like, there were like 3 different arcs where Obi-Wan was dealing with Satine and stuff like that, and you learn a little bit more and more. And then I think there's a line that he says, like, I would have left the Jedi Order if you would ask me. He was like, if you had said, I would have come running. And you're like, holy shit, what could have been? And then and then the other thing too is, like, Obi-Wan goes through some shit throughout his life. Like, he watches his master get killed in front of him, his love of his life gets killed in front of him, his best friend and apprentice turns to the dark side and tries to kill him, all these other things, he has to go into exile. And through all that, he never, like, turned to the dark side. He still remained loyal to what he believed in and all those other things like that too.
Well, just like his relationship is the inverse of Anakin's, Darth Maul is the inverse of Obi-Wan, because Darth Maul has gone through a very similar situation. He was, a child that was brought up in the ways of Dathomir, and with Sith tattoos at the age of 2. Darth Sidious, joins up with his mother, and then is like, oh wait, no, he's stronger, I'm going to take him, and then basically abducts him at a very young age, trains him in the ways of the Sith, yet not fully, because he saw his potential and didn't want to be destroyed by him, so purposely imbued flaws in both his technique and his force ability. And after that, he's seen in this episode his so at the end of this episode, Obi-Wan gets captured by Darth Maul. It escapes due to the rebellious individuals from Death Watch that didn't want Darth Maul to take over, being led by Satine's sister and Vizsla's second in command. I forgot her name, but she's redheaded.
Satine's sister.
Yeah, Satine's sister.
The other Satine.
Yeah, Satine 2. Satoon. So Obi-Wan escapes Mandalore. But at the same time, Darth Sidious, feeling the presence of Maul growing, flies to Mandalore and confronts Maul and Savage in this epic Sith duel, which I'm not a huge fan of Sidious, but I can appreciate him as a Sith Lord. Like, he's the strongest Sith Lord that has ever been, and that's mostly due to his taking advantage of the Sith culture, so then just for himself, which is very frowned upon within the Sith. But beats the shit out of Maul and Savage, murders Savage, and then takes Darth Maul at the end. Darth Maul, he defeats him, and Darth Maul says, mercy, and then he gets lightninged a little bit, and he's like, nah, there's no mercy, but I'm not going to kill you. This is going to suck, man. And
this is probably why another reason you're super excited for season 7, because we're finally gonna get to see how Maul retakes Mandalore and what happens in between all this stuff too.
Well, there was a comic.
See, I never read the comic. I know the comic exists, but like by the time I found out about it, it wasn't canon anymore, so I just never read it.
Yeah, so there was a comic, so I'm hoping that they do that. The real question is, what happens between Clone Wars and Rebels? Like, how he gets to that point, because... So, at the end of this, Darth Maul is taken prisoner by Darth Sidious. And going back a little bit for my inverse of Obi-Wan, so now his mother's dead, his brother's dead, a lot of people that he cared about. You know, he has connections, but he doesn't, like, show it too much because he's got too much Sith in him. But he's got a lot of similarities to Obi-Wan.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah, and
that
that's why they're really good nemesis. Like just every connection that they have throughout the series, because you know the next step after this, so in the comics he's taken prisoner, and then his Death Watch come back and save him and take him back to Mandalore.
Oh, okay, yeah, they're gonna have to show that
because he has a confrontation with Dooku, and there's like this whole thing with like Maul and Dooku. Like, there's some parts where they have to, like, team up on some shit and fight some people. But the next time we see Darth Maul is Solo. Because he has... It's not... They don't explain it in the show or anything, but, you know, he united Black Sun and the Pikes and the Hutts and, you know, all these criminal organizations. And then, at the end of Solo, he's the one that runs... the Crimson Dawn and Dathomir. So the new big bad crime family is Darth Maul's on Dathomir. So it'll be interesting to see like how he goes from Mandalore to being, and I want them to make a show about that. Like,
yeah, I would love a show like, 'cause that was the best part like
of Solo. Yeah,
was that reveal?
Holy fuck! Like,
and because the other thing too is like, so they showed that in Solo, but then by the time you get to Rebels. Like, he's just chilling on a fucking Dathomir. Like,
he's on Malachor.
Malachor, I'm sorry, yeah, Malachor. And he's just, like, a hobby.
And he's old and...
Like, yeah.
Weird.
Which, also, another side note, like, if you wanted a reason to watch Rebels, like, the whole Maul story arc, the way he gets brought back in, the way he interacts with Kanan and Ezra, and then his ultimate showdown with Obi-Wan is one of the best parts of that show, too.
Yeah, so. And it's taken pretty closely to the comic that... originated from
the one from that Visionaries book.
But yeah, that's the one I picked because Darth Maul, like it's got aspects of everything I love. Like I love Mandalorian shit in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. I love Sith. Darth Maul's in my top 5 favorite characters because I don't know. It's just even though he didn't have a whole lot, there was, like you could tell that there was a story to this person, even more so than Boba Fett. He had, you know, when he was originally shown, he had a unique fighting style, unique, you know, he would jump around, he used like force push and force throw, but he didn't have like a whole lot of force powers that he used. It was mostly just saber work. And then in the show, like bringing him back was such a big deal.
I remember when they announced that he was coming back, and I was like ecstatic. I was, because he was the coolest thing about episode 1. Like that lightsaber battle at the end of episode 1 is iconic. It's one of the best things about the prequels, and so I was instantly like, holy shit, here we go, shit's about to go down. And I remember a couple weeks before that episode aired where he comes, I think it's the end of season 4, because the other thing too is like Clone Wars slowly hints at Darth Maul's return, like way back in even season 2 when they, or is it season 2 or season 3 when they introduce the Night Sisters and all these other things too, because they're like, this is the planet where Darth Maul came from. You're like, oh, that's interesting. And then with the Asajj Ventress' story arc, in order to get back at Dooku when he tries to get rid of her, she goes to the Night Sisters and basically asks them to recreate what they did for Darth Maul's brother, and they do that whole thing. And so they, like, you're slowly but surely, you're like, are they gonna do it? I don't know. Because like with that comic book, like we knew that like he was like, he like came back in comics. You're like, surely they could, but like how are they gonna do it? And then I remember when they announced, I was freaked out. And then they came out with a book, I forget what it's called, but it basically told Darth Maul's like origin story of how Sidious like kidnapped him and took him from a baby and all that. He raised him on Mustafar for a couple of years and shit like that. And that book ended right at the episode in Clone Wars where Savage Opress finds him. I remember reading that book and then immediately watching the episode. I'm like, holy shit. And then watching his whole coming from being insane, like he was like a crazy person. He had that robot leg, and like him, like them restoring his sanity and stuff like that was like one of my favorite things about them. That's like honestly like like anything he's involved in is always the strongest stuff of this show.
Yeah. Have you ever watched the small bits of pre-alpha gameplay from his video game?
No, I didn't even know that existed.
It's on YouTube. You should look it up. It looks pretty dope. It would have been fantastic, but they fucked it up.
Of course they did. That's how it goes.
Fuck you, Disney.
Speaking of the episode where Savage finds Maul, I was watching it last night, and I have this very, very, very specific memory of me and my sister watching that episode while we're cooking Tyson chicken tendies. I don't know why, but I just remembered that, and like it just, for me, it just kind of highlights how Star Wars in my family, and I'm assuming Ben's family, and possibly even your family, Jordan, kind of brings.
What about other people's families?
And other people's families.
No one else
it's
exists
not
outside this
the
podcast.
It just kind of brings people together no matter their age. Because my sister's 5 years older than me. My dad's probably 20 years older than me, 30 years older than me.
You don't know how old your dad is?
I think he's 48. 20, so he'd be 28 years old.
Okay.
20 years older than me.
You're getting there, man.
So the Darth Maul is what actually I got my brother to watch Clone Wars for, because he was like, up until the point, he was like, it's just kids, because he watched the movie and he thought it was stupid, and so he never got into
Rightfully
it like
so.
I did. Yeah, like that's fair, because he's about.
Although I do love this shitty, stupid kid humor. I mean, some of it, like in the movie, like
Sky Guy.
My favorite thing was treated like the way they portrayed the battle droids.
Yes,
that was
about to say,
fucking hilarious.
the one where, so like whenever they're assaulting the tower, and the commander one is like, target 225757, and the other droid's like 25 what? And then he was like, attack there, and it was just like. Yeah, that's hilarious. Why would they need to do that more? But then it was like, oh, this little hut baby pooped stinky. And I was like, well, that's fucking dumb. Like, why not have the more highbrow jokes with these robots?
Yeah,
Jesus.
no, that was, yeah. Because then it made those, the super battle droids really slow and awkward. He was like, what? God, that's funny. But yeah, so he thought that movie was, like, really stupid. And so... I was like, no, they're bringing back Maul. Like, this shit's getting real. You need to watch this. And he was like, all right. And so I got him into it because of the story arc and everything like that.
But the first episode of this series definitely is just like, by the way, this is not a kid's show anymore. Like, we're cutting people's heads off. There are people over here surrendering, and we're going to hit them with a lightsaber still. Like, I mean, there's no, other than the decapitation, there's not any dismemberment. But I mean, still, there's glowing lines on people's chests where they just got slashed all the way through. So it's like, fuck.
Yeah, because then and then when Darth Maul first comes back and he's trying to get the Jedi's attention, they go and slaughter a village, and they don't show it, but they like, apparently the ship they stole was like a cargo ship that brought this little village supplies all the time, and so the kids were used to just running up to it and grabbing supplies, and so they see the ship landing, and it's ominous music, but the kids are like, yeah, and they're running up to the ship, and they're super happy. The door slowly opens, fog comes out, Savage and Maul just ignite their lightsabers and start running, and then you're like, holy shit. Like,
it's just like Revenge of the Sith. There's Skywalker.
There's too
What's
many
happening? Yeah.
Gosh, man, yeah, that. And the other thing that I loved about that episode too, where he murders the Black Sun, is that dude that takes them to him. He murders all of them, and he's like, "Well, it seems the decision is now up to you." And he's like, "After careful consideration, we will join you." I laugh every time I watch.
Yeah, I was just like, good choice, dude. And like,
I was like, "You're fucking smart. Look at you." Mr. Head Honcho, now you're in charge of this whole crime syndicate. Good for you.
Yeah, well, sort of.
Yeah.
He's a lieutenant now in his crime syndicate that
but you know,
he was a major head of.
Good for him.
Yeah, I want to see more Maul stuff. I want to see like more after Solo, because that was really like that big reveal. Like that was such a secret for such a long time.
Yeah, like that. I remember walking out of the theater because I also will defend Solo a lot. I really did enjoy the movie. I liked that movie. I know it wasn't perfect, but I liked it. But
I think it would have been good if it wasn't Han Solo. Like if it was
maybe
if it was called Lando and it was just about Lando and it had nothing to do, because like, okay, here's my complaints. We don't need to see the Kessel Run. We know what it is. Like there's no point in showing it to us. That would be, I don't know. I was trying to think of something to tell, but it's like nothing in Star Wars has ever done that, where it's like, let me tell you about this thing. Like, I guess Clone Wars technically, because like they mention it in the first movie, but they only ever said Clone Wars, and it was like, I think it took me like 10 years to figure out that they said clone and not cold. And I was just like, yo, what did the communists ever do to Star Wars? Like, I don't get it. Like, did they tear down the wall in space? I don't. So that was, but you know what I mean? Like, they didn't need that to go back and tell us. Like, we know that he did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. Like, that's not.
Well, the thing is, though, is they set out to do this as an origin movie because, like, he was the only character where they really don't know much about his past up until the point.
But you don't need it.
I'm not saying you don't.
I know, but okay.
Saying, like,
and that's the thing is, the major three, Luke, Leia, and Han, you don't need origin stories for them. Like, they can cameo and shit, but you don't.
But the problem is, like, Luke and Leia do get their origin. Like, they do get their origin story though.
Yeah, they just get born.
They get born, but then like the start of their story where it's important and stuff like that is in A New Hope.
Yeah, but that's the important part of Han too. Like, Han was just a smuggler. Like, that's all you need to know is that he smuggled spice. Like, it didn't matter anything else that he did. It was like that was his notable thing, but it wasn't like that was such a big thing that he was like a celebrity. Like, nobody knew who the fuck he was. It wasn't until he joined the rebellion and became a captain and a commander, and they were just like, yo, Han Solo, like, he's big shit. So, like, there was no reason to do that. And if you look at, like, that movie as, like, in the connection with the rest of the movies, like, okay, why are Han and Chewie friends? Like, you don't see that connection from, like, the small time that they were together. By the ending of Solo, it's like, how the fuck are Han and Lando friends?
Because the problem with Solo is that they planned on making, like, that's an open secret, so they, Alden, or whatever his name is.
Who?
Alden, the guy who plays Han Solo.
Oh, I don't get shit.
Whatever his name is.
Terrible.
He was signed on to do 3 movies. Like, so they planned on making more than one Solo movie. But the problem with this movie, Maul, because they were also going to explore more about Maul's shit.
Oh yeah, that was also stupid when he got his name. What's your name, Han? What's your last name?
I don't have one.
Yeah, it's like, what's the name of your people? I don't have people. Han Solo. Like, fuck off. Like,
the Rise of Skywalker did that too, though. When she's like, "What's your?"
I'm Rey Skywalker.
Dude, fucking don't even get me started on Rise of Skywalker.
You don't need a fucking last name. That was the whole point of the movie.
No, that wasn't. The whole point of Rise of Skywalker is that only people with important last names matter. That's the entire message of Rise of Skywalker. Mm-hmm. Last Jedi.
I meant Last Jedi.
Yeah, Last Jedi is the one that's like, yo, people can just be people and be important.
I love that part. That was one of my favorite themes about the Last Jedi. Okay, pulling it back into the Clone Wars.
Real quick though, kind of expanding on what you said about the Vietnam thing, I would honestly love
bringing it back to Clone Wars. Vietnam,
like the comparison between like the Vietnam movies and like the Clone Brotherhood. I would honestly love
another Vietnam.
A purely like clone based show, because I feel like,
I mean, are you talking about live action or animated?
Either.
Well, I wouldn't mind if it was like a mini series, because I think I would get bored of it after a while. But if it was just like if it was Clone Wars Band of Brothers, you ever watch Band of Brothers?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so pulling onto that point, one of the I was doing a little honorable mentions thing. The thing that we haven't talked about, there's a season 4 arc. It's Crisis on Umbara / Krell. It's basically where they have to go fight on this planet with these like gorilla. Yeah. And like the Anakin has to leave because basically I think the hidden thing about it is that Emperor Palpatine or Chancellor Palpatine didn't want him dying on this planet, so he pulled him out of there, and so they have to. So Rex and Cody and all these people have to work for General Krell, And Krell is this guy who basically Dexter from Dexter's Diner. He's the same species as him, but he's fucking ripped AF. Like, he's huge, buff, got these giant ass like huge like pike lightsabers.
Is he? So I can't remember. Does he have 2 double-bladed lightsabers, or does he have 4?
He has two double-bladed lightsabers.
Okay. I just remember 4 lasers flying around.
Yeah.
He's got like 1 blue and 1 green one, right? He's like,
I think so. I think that's what it is. Yeah. And Krell's an asshole. He doesn't care about the clones. That becomes very evident because he basically uses them as cannon fodder, and half the story is them trying to like counteract his commands and trying to win the war in spite of his commands, because basically his casualty rates are insane. And so they're trying to slowly take over this planet while trying to work under Krell, and eventually comes to realize that Krell's doing this all on purpose, because he wants to gain the attention of Count Dooku, because he wants to work for Count Dooku, some stupid shit like that. But that's not the important part. The important
part...
He
wants to open up his own diner, is what it is.
Yeah, he dreams of
competitive
serving sandwiches and soup to
he wants to be removed from the Jedi Order. But no, so like the cool part about that episode was like the clones dealing with each other, because there were some clones who were like, we need to follow Krell's orders, he's our general, that's what we're made to do. And like Rex and them are like, no, like we're more than just pawns, like we don't have to listen to him, like this is stupid, these are our people dying. And it all comes to a head when Krell sends 2 separate forces into the jungle or whatever and says, hey, the enemy has stolen our armor, you need to just shoot on sight, don't like ask for no prisoners allowed. And so all these people are killing each other, and these 2 things, like, because each side thinks that they're the enemy, and then it's like 5 minutes into the fight, and then one of them takes the helmet off, and they're like, oh shit, these are more clones, and it's the clones killing each other. And it like the way they did the reveal, it just reminded me of so many different like older Vietnam, like that's exactly what that entire arc is based off of. It's just like old Vietnam movies and stuff like that, and it was so well done. And it's one of my, it was had I not talked about Mortis, I would have talked about that trilogy arc, just because of how like important it was to the story of clones and the show's part in humanizing them and stuff like that. And that was one of my other like favorite arcs of that show.
That makes me think of, they're in the 3rd episode of my arc, when Satine sends a distress signal to Coruscant, to Obi-Wan. Ki-Adi-Mundi and Yoda are there, and they're the ones that call in Obi-Wan. And so they have a discussion, those Jedi Masters, and they're like, well, the Mandalore is part of the neutral territories. Like, they're not part of... Like, if it was a Republic world, like, we could go help them. And that got me thinking. I was like, well, you're Jedi. You're not... Like, even though you're generals to troops of the Republic,
yeah,
you're not beheld to only focus on the Republic. It's...
You were supposed to bring peace to all the worlds.
Right.
Keep, like...
And so the fact that they're, like, because they're in wartime and whatnot, they're like, well, we can't do anything. And so, like, Obi-Wan basically... I don't think he has to get permission, because when he's a Jedi Master, and 2, and also on the Council, but 2, it's just like, Jedi can go and just do their missions whenever they need to go do their own missions and stuff. But the fact that he couldn't get any support, I was just like... Yo, that's fucked. Like,
yeah,
why couldn't he have just taken like another Jedi and gone and done that? So it's it's another one of those things where the Jedi are fucking up.
Well, the problem with them going to Mandalore is at the time they didn't know that Maul was behind it. They thought it was just Death Watch, and so I think that was part of that. But even then, like you said, like there's no reason why the Jedi should have been able to evolve, and that's another one of those things where the Jedi became too involved with politics and stuff like that. They were too heavily tied to it, because like they were under the control of the Senate, and so they couldn't do anything without the Senate's approval because of their reorganization into military generals and stuff like that. It's because they were so involved in that, them going over to that planet would have been seen as the Republic stepping in, no matter if it was actually the case or not.
Yeah.
And so
sucks.
Shit sucks, bro.
Shit sucks. Well, I don't know about y'all, but I think that we have pretty much exhausted our Clone Wars.
So one final thing is...
Fuck Rise of Skywalker.
What are y'all's expectations for Season 7?
I think it's going to suck dick, dude.
Like, what do you want to see? What are you most hopeful about? Do you think it's going to be a good final conclusion to this really important piece of Star Wars canon?
I think it'll be interesting because didn't the show it didn't end with Ahsoka leaving, but that was like the last time you saw her in that was when she turned her back on the Jedi because they turned their backs on her.
Yep.
So it's gonna be interesting to see if they incorporate her at all, being a Force sensitive. It was also right before Order 66. There's supposed to be a canon storyline of Ahsoka and Rex during Order 66.
So that's the Siege of Mandalore, where Maul takes back Mandalore. That's the Ahsoka arc. That's where it leads into. So the excuse as to why Ahsoka is not in Episode 3 is because while Anakin and them are fucking dealing with the attack on Coruscant, Ahsoka's leading the charge with Rex on Mandalore to take back Mandalore.
Okay.
So that's, I think, I don't know if they're still going to do that, but that was always the intention. So
that's actually before, that whole storyline is before she's put, like, on trial for...
No, this is after. So by the time
I thought she left the Jedi Order.
She did, but so we don't know how, but somehow she gets re-involved. Because I think that's part of what Season 7 is going to do, is going to explain how she ended up there. Because, like, that's her thing, is that, like, the showdown with her and Maul is going to be, like, right around the time Order 66 happens, supposedly.
Okay. So that's what I'm interested in, because, again, that's two characters that I really care about, and I've really liked their whole back and forth. I think it's cool that Ahsoka's kind of taken up the mantle against Darth Maul when Obi-Wan's not around, especially, like, in Rebels.
Yeah.
She's, like, that episode with Maul when they go to Malachor and find Maul, and Ezra has his Jedi Master, he's got Ahsoka who's a gray Jedi, then he's got a Sith Lord, and all of them are whispering in his ear, and it's like, yo shit, I don't know what to do, like all this Force ideology is being thrown at me, and I'm gonna choose the wrong one because I'm a dumb kid and they keep making kids make decisions. What stupid idea do you have, Tyler?
I know that didn't come out. I know you weren't intending that to be shitty, but...
No, that was definitely, yeah.
They didn't really resolve Five's arc.
God, you and these fucking clones, dude.
Okay, here's the thing, though.
They're humans!
But the last thing that I remember is Palpatine and his gang.
What is this gang?
I don't know. Palpatine and his people taking Fives under for inspection and stuff. So I'm really wondering if they're going to expand upon that. Like you were saying, I wonder what they're going to do with the whole Ahsoka arc, and if they're going to bring her back, or if it's going to be like, I don't fucking know. But I'm just really interested to see how it plays out and how they're going to end it. Like, because, I mean, obviously Rex is in Rebels. I haven't watched Rebels personally. I intend on watching it. I just haven't yet.
It's like Clone Wars, where it's really rough the first couple of seasons, then it gets good.
Okay. But the other thing, too, is, like, that show had no end direction. Like, that was the problem with it. With the Clone Wars, like, you knew exactly where they were going to end, so you know what they had to get to. Rebels doesn't have that, per se, like, because they had no clue exactly how they were going to fit it into the canon, so, like, a lot of the storylines are just kind of, and they go in a lot of different directions, but...
And I'm not the biggest fan of the change in art style. I mean, it's similar, but not the same.
It
makes lightsabers look
weird. It had to grow on me, because they tried to go for the Ralph McQuarrie, like, concept artwork for their style. That's kind of why it is what it is, but even then, it's just like Clone Wars has a matte finish, and Rebels has a glossy finish, and it's just very jarring to see characters, especially characters that come from both shows, in the different artworks. It's fucking weird, but...
Well, yeah.
Better than Resistance, or whatever the hell that was called.
Don't even get me started on this show. That was a big fucking letdown.
How about you, Ben? What do you want to see?
I don't... Like I said, I really cannot wait to see how they tie into Order 66, and I really hope that they show Episode 3 from different angles, because the trailers have kind of alluded to that a little bit, and I'm really stoked to see that, because now that we have so much more investment in the clones and Ahsoka, and we have a whole lot more understanding of where these characters' headspaces are at. Now to see that from a different angle is going to be very exciting. Like I've been waiting for that ever since the show started, because I'm like, we know where they're going, so like I want to see how they get there, and I want to see what they do once they get there.
That would be a really interesting concept. That like it's like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of episode 3. You ever watch that movie? Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. It's 2 secondary characters from Hamlet. And so, like, it's what they're doing the entire time Hamlet's happening. So, like, shit's going on in the background that's, like, Hamlet, but it's...
Yeah, I love that shit.
Yeah, so
like,
it's
that's so much fun to do, especially, like, when you know the stories so well.
Yeah, so it's, like, you could just... They could have a part where it's got Anakin and his 501st, like, marching up the steps to the Jedi Temple, like, in the background, and then it's, like, other people like, whoa, fuck, like, we need to get the fuck out of here. There's bad people over there. And
yeah.
That'd be
because then, like,
really cool.
Also they have to establish, like... Because I think in Rebels, they said that Rex ripped out his chip, right?
Yeah, they're, like, they cut him out or something.
Yeah, Rex cut his out, but I don't think Wolf ever did.
So I thought he had a scar, too.
I don't think he cut it out. I think he just happened to hang out with Rex after the fact. That's what I always thought it was. I don't really know for sure. I could be wrong. But I always thought that was funny because I was like, Wolf was a really cool character and he fucking shot up Plo Koon. That sucks. But
on a side note, I am kind of interested to see how they're going to deal with the... Oh, wait, they already took care of that. Never mind.
What?
I was going to say the Jedi
What happened
armor.
to Padme?
No.
Yeah, what happened to Padme?
I was going to say what happened with the Jedi armor, and then I remember that the Jedi got a redesign and they lost the white armor that Obi-Wan
gets, like, he keeps the gauntlets for a
Which,
while.
by the way, like, that's cool. Like, that's that's smart.
It looks okay. So they added that into Battlefront 2, and it looks goofy as fuck.
The Battlefront 2, like, Clone Wars armor.
Yeah.
I say that Obi-Wan's looks the worst.
Yeah.
Because it's so bulky on them, and it just doesn't translate. Because the Clone Wars, that makes their head proportionate to the bodies.
Yeah.
a little bit.
It makes their body like it's skin tight, looks like normal body size, but on a normal person, it's got like, you know, it just I don't know, it looks terrible.
Okay, yeah, it looks shitty. I agree.
Well, the good news is if anybody's listening to this, it'll be way after the fact that the show started, and they already know what's happening.
Yeah, so you know more than we do right now. Maybe you're laughing at us because we're a bunch of fucking idiots and we got everything wrong, but only time will tell.
You guys got everything wrong. I'm mostly right.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Well, we'll find
That's how
out
it works.
tomorrow. So,
All
gosh.
right.
All right,
Anything else?
I think
no, hopefully, maybe this is the last Star Wars episode we ever have. Who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't even know our name.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know. Maybe we can name it the name.
So there concludes episode 2 of Star Wars Talk.
Don't call it Star Wars Talk.
Episode 2, Attack of the Clone Idea Concept.
Attack of the
episode.
A cast of the pod. No, I was trying to.
Attack of the Podcast.
Yeah.
Cast of the podcast.
Revenge pod of the cast. Yep.
That's a Phantom
Cast.
Menace Cast.
Phantom cast. That's just how your arm heals after you break it, but you don't want to.
It's like that really shitty, fucking like. Well, it's not shitty, but it's like the brace that they make you wear after you break a bone or whatever, instead of a cast.
I have to wear one of those for my knee sometimes because I have a bad knee because I'm old.
Why you shit on him, Tyler?
Yeah,
Shitting
thanks a
on
lot,
you.
man.
I'm not shitting on you. I'm just.
You just wait 10 years.
Why are you
when
age
can't eat
shaming
chili
him, Tyler?
anymore.
I'm not age shaming.
Wow. All right, you've listened to the Aegis podcast. My name is Jordan.
My name is Ben.
I'm Tyler.
See you next time.
Bye.